All right, so let's get started now. 10 of the 11 Congress MLAs in Goa met late last evening to discuss what the party called a failed attempt by the ruling BJP to cause a split.
The party has accused its two key MLAs, this is Digambar Kamath as well as Michael Lobo, of involvement in the plan and has requested the Assembly Speaker to disqualify them under the anti-defection law. Kamath was the only MLA missing at the legislative party meeting, and the former Chief Minister was miffed that he was not offered the post of the leader of the opposition. Gargi.
Now, asked if the crisis has blown over, one of the rebels, Michael Lobo, the leader of opposition who has sacked since, told NDTV that the events have been blown out of proportion. He accused outsiders of calling shots within the party and said he's still with the Congress. Well, let's go across to Saurabh now for all the very latest. So, Saurabh, are we to understand the crisis is now over for the Congress in Goa? And you've been speaking to many leaders. What have they said?
Well, is the crisis over? That's $1 million question, and no one can be quite sure about it, because what sources tell us is that parleys have been going on in spite of the Congress firefighting. But for the moment, one can say that yes, it may be over just for the moment. But that's not relief enough for the Congress, because remember, something like this can flare up any minute and lead to defections from the Congress to the BJP. Now, why does the BJP need this? It already has a majority, it already has a government, unlike Maharashtra, where opposition lotus was required to set up government. Now, that, of course, is the big question, and that question can be answered in two parts. One is, of course, that the Congress, as an opposition, has its own weaknesses. There are internal problems, and the BJP can exploit that. More importantly, the BJP is looking at 2 seats from Goa in 2024. The South Goa seat is something that the Congress has almost always won. And remember, people like Digambar Kamath, who's still not returned to the Congress meeting, he, of course, is from South Goa. His constituency is Margao, and that, of course, is something that, is a worry for the Congress. So, obviously, this is something that, this is something that the Congress would want to avoid. And at this point, they're trying to, get in Digambar Kamath in touch and, sort of try and resolve the issues. Digambar Kamath has said he's upset, but, who are the people who were leading this so-called defection plan? That was, of course, according to the Congress, Michael Lobo and Digambar Kamath. Mukul Wasnik was rushed here to firefight this issue. I spoke to both Michael Lobo and Mukul Wasnik last night as those deliberations at the Congress office in Panji ended. Well, joining me now is Michael Lobo, who's of course been accused by the Congress of trying to engineer a split, but he's in the party office now. Sir, you had a long meeting with the Congress leaders. What did you tell them? What did they tell you? And can we say this has blown over?
I think it is blown out of proportion for no reason. And day before yesterday, when we had a meeting at the Fortune, CLP meeting plus press conference yesterday in Margao, where Dinesh Gundurao was staying in Majestic. I had spoken to the press over there also, along with Dinesh Gundurao ji. Again, they wanted to have another press conference over here, where I had to go for some function in my constituency. 3 functions were there. So I don't know why there was a need to have so many press conferences, which I cannot caution the party. Party is supreme. We are just elected. We are new into the party.
But sir, you've also...
But there are external forces who are also working to see that I am sidelined.
You are saying external forces, and you're also facing disqualification proceedings. They
have just filed it today on Digambarji, who is the ex-chief minister and who was the CLP leader, who was earlier the mines minister, who was so many other portfolios he was holding, power minister. So he's a very senior guy. I think I told them today also that you need to sit and speak to him, and I think
I think you also suggested his name, if that's what I heard correctly, for CLP, because yes, you've been removed from that post.
No, I had told them that I am not interested to continue. Please give it to Digambarji or give it to whoever you all want, if Digambarji is not accepted.
So last question.
I think Nigam would have accepted long back.
So you think that means he'll also come back? He's not here today, and you came back. You came a little late, but you came back.
No, late means today assembly is going on from 11 o'clock till now. And I found it little obvious that our MLAs left the assembly and came here.
So
there was voting today, which is not right. I was officiating, acting Speaker of the House earlier. You have to stay till the voting is over.
So last question, is Michael Lobo going to be in the Congress for the next 5 years? Will you complete your term as a Congress MLA, or can we expect something like this to happen again?
See, nothing has happened. I just told you that there are a lot of people who are working overtime to see that Michael Lobo is pushed down. I am seriously telling you this.
But that's been an age-old complaint in the Congress.
So why are they not ready to understand this? I am new into the party.
Are you finding difficult to accept that?
I am new into the party. I don't know how the Congress
politics
works. Yeah, how the Congress works. But I feel that there are still people not in the party, but who have left the party and gone, and they are in some other party. They are also calling the shots.
They are engineering this.
They are calling the shots.
So that's very strong words, but you're saying you're going to be with the Congress.
I am again telling you that I have spoken to the in charge, and he will give the report on top. That what is my stand, I have told him.
And you'll be with the Congress.
I have already told that I am with the Congress.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Lobo, for speaking to NDTV. So Mr. Michael Lobo saying that he's going to remain with the Congress. And when I asked him if this has blown over, he said, well, this was blown out of proportion. But with a dose of caution, you can never rule out anything in Goa politics. So it's not over till it's over. But for the moment, it seems this particular rebellion that the Congress claims it found out on time and acted against seems to have blown over, because 10 MLAs of the 11 were here. The only one missing was Digambar Kamath, a former chief minister of the party, who still seems upset with the party and has said so in a press interview as well. Let's hope, of course, the Congress hopes that he will also come back to the party. But again, that is something that only time will tell. At Panji in Goa, with camera person Praveen Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV. As news of a possible rebellion amongst Goa Congress MLAs broke, Congress President Sonia Gandhi rushed Mukul Wasnik, senior Congress leader, former Union Minister, to Goa. So you've met with the MLAs. There was a possibility of a rebellion. Possibly they didn't reach the numbers because the Congress perhaps figured out pretty early that this was happening and stepped in. Is the matter blown over now?
I don't think that there was any problem within the Congress party. And you have seen that we just finished our deliberations with all the MLAs. 10 out of 11 MLAs have attended the meeting of the Congress Legislature Party. Absolutely no problem within the Congress. But there are some habitual offenders in our national political life who on and off, state after state, try to poach on MLAs from other parties, particularly the Congress party. And that type of an attempt was being made in Goa. But you have seen that the Congress MLAs stood their ground solidly, unitedly, and all that was planned by those habitual offenders has completely been exposed and completely failed.
Thank you, Mr. Wasnik, for speaking to NDTV. Mukul Wasnik, senior Congress leader, former Union Minister, also speaking to us, telling what has transpired throughout the day. He says the habitual offenders, poachers of MLAs, have been up to no good in Goa. In Goa, with camera person Praveen Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
All right, so the crisis may have been warded off for the moment in Goa, but moving on to news now from Maharashtra, where 17 Shiv Sena MPs who attended a meeting called by former Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray asked that the party support the NDA's presidential candidate Draupadi Murmu.
Right, Gargi, Sena MP Gajanan Kirtikar also told NDTV after the meeting that all 17 MPs agreed that Draupadi Murmu is a tribal woman and that's why they should vote for her. Remember, Maharashtra has a chunk of the tribal population and there's no whip for presidential elections and the MPs can vote according to their own will, Gargi.
That's right. So the suggestion by MPs, all of the Thackeray loyalists, could be a precursor to a possible change in stance of the party, which has so far supported the joint opposition candidate Yashwant Sinha. Thackeray is expected to take a decision on the matter within a few days.
राष्ट्रपति निवडणूक जो है 18 को जब ये हमको वोट देना है तो तभी ये एनडीए की कैंडिडेट होने के बावजूद भी ये द्रौपदी मुर्मू जो है ये आदिवासी है, महिला है, उसके लिए उसको हमारा समर्थन होना चाहिए, ऐसी मांग सभी सांसदों ने पक्ष प्रमुख के साथ की है। 1-2 दिन में मैं निर्णय दूंगा, ऐसा उद्धव जी ने हमें सबको बताया।
And the Supreme Court will hear fact-checker Mohammad Zubair's bail plea. Zubair has moved the top court challenging the Allahabad High Court order refusing to set aside an FIR registered against him in Uttar Pradesh's Sitapur. And Gargi, this was for a tweet in which he allegedly called Hindu seers hate mongers.
That's right. Today, a bench of Justices D.Y. Chandrachud and A.S. Bopanna will hear the case. In the last hearing on Friday, he was granted interim bail for 5 days in the same case. However, since then, Zubair has remained in custody as he now faces other FIRs in Delhi and the FIR in Lakhimpur Kheri as well. Let's go across to Sukirti for more. Sukirti, give us more details about what's coming up in the Supreme Court. This is related to the Sitapur case, though he remains in custody in UP in the Lakhimpur case for the moment.
Well, yes, so this particular case is with regard to the Sitapur FIR, which had been lodged against him for putting out a tweet where he called 3 religious leaders as hate mongers. Last week, there was a hearing in this case when he was granted a 5 days interim bail. But in that hearing, the UP government had opposed his bail, with the UP government as well as the UP police arguing in court that this is somebody who's a habitual offender and he's part of a syndicate that puts out such tweets by calling a religious leader like Bajrang Mani a hate. In court had been that he has been exposing the venomous language of these religious leaders. He's been exposing the hate speech of these leaders who've been making statements about mass violence against Muslims, and all of that is being exposed by him. That is not equivalent to spreading religious enmity. But despite all of those defensive arguments, he only got a 5-day interim bail, which again was not effective for him since he faces FIRs and other cases as well. So even yesterday, the Lakhimpur court has already put him on 14 days of judicial custody. So the kind of relief that he gets in the Sitapur case, whether or not that is actually going to lead him to walk out of jail is the big question. But definitely for Mohammad Zubair, who's been making rounds of from everywhere, from the Delhi High Court and Patiala House Court to the Supreme Court of the country, he would hope that finally the top court would give him some kind of relief, that finally after all these days of being taken into custody by different police of different states, he would finally get to walk out free.
Right, Sukirti, thank you so much for joining us. We will keep tracking the story and keep coming back to you for more on that. But in the meantime, moving on, it's been more than 72 hours since a flash flood near the Amarnath shrine swept away dozens of pilgrims, killing at least 16 people. During this period, there is no formal statement by the Amarnath Shrine Board or the Jammu and Kashmir administration about the exact number of people who've gone missing.
That's right. An initial estimate by different security agencies had put that number of missing at 40. Eventually, there were many more distressed calls from relatives who couldn't contact their dear ones who had gone for the Yatra, and officials say several pilgrims who couldn't contact their families have been found.
Yet, no one knows the exact number of victims who may have been buried under debris.
I think a major effort has already gone through, and they have, I think, already cleared opening the Yatra again. We think maybe in a day or two we will be able to clear the area for anything else.
The question is, जहाँ पे ये लगाया गया है, I don't think अभी तक वहाँ कभी भी ऐसे टेंट या खाने की जगह लगाई गई थी। ये पहली दफ़ा है। तो जबकि इन लोगों को वो जगहें पंचतरनी इतना अच्छा इलाका है, वहाँ कोई चीज़ कर नहीं सकती। तो सदियों से पंचतरनी चल रहा था। तो मैं समझता हूँ इसको तहकीकात करनी चाहिए। हो सकता है इंसान की गलती हो सकती है।
Well, let's now go across to Nazir Masoodi for more. And Nazir, so two issues. One is we still don't know how many people, are actually missing and how many of those are now dead. And that's extremely tragic. Also, Farooq Abdullah, who used to be on the Amarnath board, questioning why the tents were pitched in the area that they were pitched, saying that this is more vulnerable and tents have never been pitched there. Give us more details.
Well, it is day 4 after the tragedy, and we don't know what is the exact number of those who went missing, who were swept away. Number of pilgrims were swept away by the flash floods and presumed to be buried under the debris, which is like solid, which has become solid rock near the cave shrine. And Amarnath Shrine Board has not come up with a clear statement or a formal statement what is the number of, the missing people. And they have not, unfortunately, they have not even made it to even the statistics and who were swept away and lost. That is the big thing. What is the number of, people who are still missing? We all know 16 people have died. But there was so many speculation about the number of missing. Initially, the number was put at 40. Then there were around 165 calls from the relatives of those who could not contact their dear ones who were on the Yatra. But many of them, like the government said, 35 pilgrims from Andhra Pradesh, they were found and they have contacted their families. But nobody knows about the rest of the Yatris. There is no clarity actually. That is the big, question. Why Sri Amarnath Shrine Board is not talking and making a formal statement about the number of missing. Then there are questions why Shrine Board has not learned lessons. Because it is the same place, same spot, same location where cloudburst or the flash floods hit on 28th of last month. Because of the pandemic, there was no yatra, so there was no loss of life last year. But tents were pitched exactly at the same place, right next to the cave shrine. And again, that's why you heard Farooq Abdullah talking about there should be probe. In fact, Farooq Abdullah is someone who has played a key role in constituting Sri Amarnath Shrine Board when he was the chief minister between 1996 and 2002. Normally, no tents were being, pitched, camping were allowed beyond Panchtarni, which is 5 kilometers away from the cave shrine. So all this base camp at the Panchtarni, and then people would walk on foot. Even there was a helipad near the, this cave shrine. Even that was moved away during Governor, N.N. Vohra's time. He was the chairman of the, head of the shrine board that time. So there are several questions, and also we hear pilgrims talking about, handling of the yatra and why tents were pitched here, and why, these radio frequency tags, they didn't work actually when it was provided to every yatri. And since the yatra is seen through the just prism of the security, other important issues are taking a back seat. That remains the challenge, how government will see the yatra beyond security where such things do not repeat.
Right. Thank you so much, Nazir, for bringing us those details. Gargi, this yatra that's resumed almost after 3 years. I mean, in 2019 it was stalled, and now we have, due to the pandemic, the last 2 years it didn't happen. And of course, those very important questions being brought up. Why was it taken so close to the holy cave when we did know that the weather was going to be bad?
A vulnerable area, and hopefully the matter will be probed and some clarity on the missing people. But another issue, the Amarnath pilgrims had a radio frequency identification device or RFID based tracking system on them, but even then the authorities are unable to locate them. Let's go across to Neeta to understand this better. Neeta, tell us about this tracking device that was given to the yatris, and why hasn't it worked?
See, Gargi, the 2022 Yatra was very different from previous Yatras. Some of the, things have been narrated by Nazir also, but this time RFID was provided to each and every Yatri for security reasons. But these RFIDs were provided, but everything was being noted down manually, despite it being a technology-driven exercise. Officers that I spoke to who are operating on ground, they say there were not enough readers which could have, through which the signals can be transmitted. And in case of any tragedy, like in this case, when a cloudburst happened and almost 15 people so far have died, when they say a radio frequency tag is kind of a like a tag, like a NDTV identity card, like you wear it around your neck. Each and every yatri is asked to wear it around their neck. But the climb is so treacherous. Mostly what the yatris do is they either keep it in their pockets or they keep it in their purse. Once the RFID is kept either in a pocket or is concealed, then it stops transmitting signals, and that is what happens in most of the cases. And when this tragedy happened, most of the yatris who were impacted by this tragedy were either drowned or or were under some kind of a slush. That time also an RFID does not transmit signals, and that is why the entire exercise of this RFID it doesn't work during the tragedies. That was what I was made to understand. And another thing, still the manual exercise is going on. Still each and every yatri is trying to be located through phone calls, though the SASB, that is the Shrine Board, says that now most of the yatris have been located, because earlier there was this rumor that about 35 yatris from Andhra Pradesh are not being located. But yesterday, a letter was sent to Divisional Commissioner of Kashmir saying that 35 yatris they have spoken to the near and dear ones back home, so they are on their way through train. So the entire exercise is still being carried out manually. So the technology-driven exercise is now being carried out manually, which is an entire waste of time and also money also. Another important aspect is now today, the update is the Yatra has again started from the Baltal route also. But since the route was washed away, even though the army pitched in their effort and they tried to carve out another way leading up to the cave, but now today, we also come to know that the SASB, that is the Shrine Board, has also notified that from Budgam, the passengers can directly fly to Panchtarni. Earlier, they were only flying up to Baltal or Pahalgam and then taking a second flight. Now there is a direct flight. So all these man-made exercises are making it difficult ecologically. So these kind of tragedies do take place. We had seen it in Kedarnath also. Now we are seeing here also. And interestingly, last year also, when there was a cloudburst, the same route, the fall of the water was on the same side. So now the questions are being raised that why langar tents were allowed to be erected on the same spot where last year the tragedy had struck, the same cloudburst had happened and water had fallen on that same spot only. Gargi?
That's right, Neeta, thanks so much for joining us with that. And that's the point that Farooq Abdullah also raised, that why were the tents pitched in this vulnerable area? So many questions, and clearly technology, they're failing to really protect the pilgrims. Thanks so much, Neeta, for joining us with that.
Welcome back. The clearest image to date of the early universe and dating back to 13 billion years has now finally been released by the White House, Gargi.
It's absolutely mind-blowing. I still don't exactly understand how it was done, but this was unveiled by President Biden. The image covers a patch of sky approximately the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length on the ground and shows thousands of galaxies and the faintest objects ever observed. So absolutely incredible, Divya, that, science, and we get to see something like this.
Right, this image is from James Webb telescope, which costs about $10 billion US, which has been released after a 6-month process of remotely unfurling the observatory's various components, and this is to usher in a revolutionary era of astronomical discovery, Gargi.
Right, even President Biden called it mind-blowing, the fact that we could even get this image. Well, we'll talk more about this. Time for us to now slip into a short break. We have a lot more coming up on the other side. Welcome back. Let's now get you the latest on the Congress crisis in Goa, which seems to have been warded off for the moment. 10 of the 11 Congress MLAs in Goa met late last evening to discuss what the party called a failed attempt by the ruling BJP to cause a split.
Right, Gargi, the party has accused its two key MLAs, that's Digambar Kamath as well as Michael Lobo's involvement in the plan, and has requested the Assembly Speaker to disqualify them under the anti-defection law. Kamath was the only MLA missing at the legislature party meeting, and the former Chief Minister was miffed that he was not offered the post of the leader of the opposition.
Now, interestingly, Michael Lobo was there and asked if the crisis has blown over. He said that he told NDTV that the events had been blown out of proportion, and he accused outsiders of calling shots within the party and said he's still with the Congress. Just listen in to what he told NDTV Saurabh.
Well, joining me now is Michael Lobo, who's of course been accused by the Congress of trying to engineer a split, but he's in the party office now. Sir, you had a long meeting with the Congress leaders. What did you tell them? What did they tell you? And can we say this has blown over?
I think it is blown out of proportion for no reason. And day before yesterday, when we had a meeting at the Fortune, CLP meeting plus press conference yesterday in Margao, where Dinesh Gundurao was staying in Majestic, I had spoken to the press over there also, along with Dinesh Gundurao ji. Again they wanted to have another press conference over here, where I had to go for some function of in my constituency. 3 functions were there. So I don't know why there was a need to have so many press conferences, which I cannot caution the party. Party is supreme. We are just elected. We are new into the party.
But sir, you've also...
But there are external forces who are also working to see that I am sidelined.
You are seeing external forces and you're also facing disqualification proceedings. They
have just filed it today on Digambarji, who is the ex-chief minister and who was the CLP leader, who was earlier the mines minister, who was so many other portfolios he was holding, power minister. So he is a very senior guy. I think I told them today also that you need to sit and speak to him, and I think
I think you also suggested his name, if that's what I heard correctly, for CLP, because
yes,
you've been removed from that post.
No, I had told them that I am not interested to continue. Please give it to Digambarji or give it to whoever you all want, if Digambarji is not accepted.
Sir, last question.
I think Digambarji would have accepted long back.
So you think that means he'll also come back? He's not here today, and you came back. You came a little late, but you came back.
No, late means today assembly is going on from 11 o'clock till now, and I found it little obvious that our MLAs left the assembly and came here. So there was voting today, which is not right. I was officiating, acting Speaker of the House earlier. You have to stay till the voting is over.
So last question, is Michael Lobo going to be in the Congress for the next 5 years? Will you complete your term as a Congress MLA, or can we expect something like this to happen again?
See, nothing has happened. I just told you that there are a lot of people who are working overtime to see that Michael Lobo is pushed down. I am seriously telling you this.
But that's been an age-old complaint in the Congress.
So why are they not ready to understand this? I am new into the party.
Are you finding difficult to accept that?
I am new into the party. I don't know how the Congress
politics
works. Yeah, how the Congress works. But I feel that there are still people not in the party, but who have left the party and gone, and they are in some other party. They are also calling the shots.
They are engineering this.
They are calling the shots.
So that's very strong words, but you're saying you're going to be with the Congress.
I am again telling you that I have spoken to the in charge, and he will give the report on top. That what is my stand, I have told him.
And you'll be with the Congress.
I have already told that I am with the Congress.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Lobo, for speaking to NDTV. So Mr. Michael Lobo saying that he's going to remain with the Congress. And when I asked him if this has blown over, he said, well, this was blown out of proportion. But with a dose of caution, you can never rule out anything in Goa politics. So it's not over till it's over. But for the moment, it seems this particular rebellion that the Congress claims it found out on time and acted against seems to have blown over, because 10 MLAs of the 11 were here. The only one missing was Digambar Kamath, a former chief minister of the party, who still seems upset with the party and has said so in a press interview as well. Let's hope, of course, the Congress hopes that he will also come back to the party. But again, that is something that only time will tell. At Panji in Goa, with camera person Praveen Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
In fact, Michael Lobo, they're sounding quite shaky still and quite upset with the Congress. And Congress leaders off the record have described this Operation Lotus, the ruling BJP's alleged attempt. And sources said the BJP had even chartered a flight ready to move some Congress MLAs out of Goa. 5 MLAs had been in Communicado on Sunday, setting alarm bells ringing in Panaji and then in Delhi as well.
Absolutely, Gargi. The ruling BJP has denied allegations of involvement. The BJP has nothing to do with whatever's happening in the Congress party, is what the party spokesperson Yatish Nayak had to say. A top BJP leader, sources in the Congress have said, was personally in touch with the Congress MLAs.
That's why Mukul Wasnik was flown down. The MLAs, as sources said, were offered huge sums of money, 15 to 20 crore each, to defect to the BJP. But the plan was finally dropped as the numbers did not add up. Here's what Mukul Wasnik told Saurabh.
As news of a possible rebellion amongst Goa Congress MLAs broke, Congress President Sonia Gandhi rushed Mukul Wasnik, senior Congress leader, former Union Minister, to Goa. So you've met with the MLAs. There was a possibility of a rebellion. Possibly they didn't reach the numbers because the Congress perhaps figured out pretty early that this was happening and stepped in. Is the matter blown over now?
I don't think that there was any problem within the Congress party. And you have seen that we just finished our deliberations with all the MLAs. 10 out of 11 MLAs have attended the meeting of the Congress Legislature Party. Absolutely no problem within the Congress. But there are some habitual offenders in our national political life who on and off, state after state, try to poach on MLAs from other parties, particularly the Congress party. And that type of an attempt was being made in Goa. But you have seen that the Congress MLAs stood their ground solidly, unitedly, and all that was planned by those habitual offenders has completely been exposed and completely failed.
Thank you, Mr. Wasnik, for speaking to NDTV. Mukul Wasnik, senior Congress leader, former Union Minister, also speaking to us, telling what has transpired throughout the day. He says the habitual offenders, poachers of MLAs, have been up to no good in Goa. In Goa, with camera person Praveen Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
All right, well, let's now focus on Divya's field of expertise, and that's the weather and tracking the monsoon. And Divya, it looks like a red alert in many parts of the country, in Mumbai, Konkan and Goa, also in Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra.
Well, Gargi is the interiors of Maharashtra as well. So and that red alert that you've just mentioned, which includes Konkan, Goa, including Mumbai, including Madhya Maharashtra, and also parts of Gujarat. That red alert warning is issued till about Thursday. So the next 3 days are not looking good. Very heavy showers expected in the area. Today we also have a red alert warning issued for Telangana. That continues for the next 24 hours along with parts of Vidarbha. So extremely heavy rain expected in central parts of the country. And this is because of multiple weather systems that are coming about together during the monsoon season. What can we expect as far as most parts are concerned, especially in Gujarat, where very heavy showers have been, in fact, recorded in the last 24 hours. Just
right, we've been seeing those visuals since yesterday of the flooding in parts of Gujarat, and absolutely frightening, and so many low-lying areas completely flooded. And Divya, if we talk about the monsoon, then it's a surplus right now?
Absolutely. There's a 7% surplus in the country, Gargi, and that's all because the way it's been raining in central and the southern part of the country. When we talk about the southern part of the country, there's a 27% surplus, and that's just happened over a month and a half, and not even a month and a half. In the first 40 days of the monsoon season, there's a 27% surplus. In central parts of the country, about a 10% surplus, and that is the situation on the ground. But then we have other areas like Delhi. We did see showers come in yesterday, and that was the second time it rained as far as the entire as season is concerned, which started on the 1st of July. So over the last 10 days, we didn't have any showers. We're expecting more as far as the national capital is concerned. But when we just talk about the monsoon fury and how it's been, first it was the northeast in Assam and Meghalaya. Then we saw again, Mumbai, where it was raining very, very heavily. And now that weather system has moved towards Gujarat and we see very heavy showers there. So central parts of the country, like we mentioned, very heavy showers, and then now also in the northern part of the country, these are
and
showers
now we
coming
can see in Noida as well, and we know here in Delhi we've been waiting for the rain. Finally yesterday we got rain, and there have been questions also raised how the IMD got the forecast wrong. In a sense, they predicted over the weekend, but we didn't see much rain. But now it seems that the rain has arrived in Delhi as well.
Gargi, like you mentioned, the Met has actually got it wrong, because last week there was an orange category warning that was put out for Delhi, in fact twice, not once but twice, and there was no sign of rain. On a Sunday, in fact, it was meant to rain a lot. On the 10th of July, they said it will be raining heavily, but there was no sign of it. And then, of course, it did finally come about yesterday. That was the second time it's rained in the national capital. But what's interesting is, in the national capital, it rains about 7 days. That's the average of the number of rainfall days in the month of July. So now we've already had 2. And we could be, in fact, counting down to the next 5. But however, the Met Office is saying that it's going to rain today. Light showers expected today as well as tomorrow.
All right, so that's a look at the weather across the country and the monsoon. And as we said, a red alert in many parts of central India.
Now, the crisis in Sri Lanka has only intensified, Gargi, with Sri Lanka's presidential palace making it a tourist spot and protesters swimming inside the president's private pool.
And there you can see NDTV Shrija also inside the presidential palace. We have to ask if she took a swim, but yes, she's been covering all those protesters who've said they're going to stay put till the president and prime minister resign. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Ranil Wickremesinghe are expected to resign tomorrow. 13th of July is what they'd said. Sri Lanka's embattled president was flown to an airbase near the main international airport Monday, according to officials, raising speculation that he will flee into exile abroad. And also $50,000 in cash that Rajapaksa had left behind at the presidential palace was handed over to a court after being turned in by the protesters. So quite something. The protesters found that cash but turned it in. Official sources said a suitcase full of documents had also been left behind. And Sri Lanka's parliament will reconvene on July 15th. And it said that a new president will be elected on the 20th.
Right, Gargi. So we'll have a new president of Sri Lanka on the 20th. But look at this mayhem and look at, in fact, all those protesters still staying put and staying inside the presidential palace. Our colleague Shrija sent us this ground report.
Probably never in the political history of Sri Lanka would someone have witnessed where, citizens, common man would have just breached the heavily guarded presidential palace to explore and catch a glimpse of what a luxury life Gotabaya Rajapaksa was actually living. Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's presidential palace has become a tourist spot. This, of course, looks like a cupboard, but it is not one, because it opens and it leads to several floors, at least 2 floors down. Now, what we are going to do is just to show you like this, which the protesters have termed it as a secret bunker, but there is also a lift that operates through this particular secret bunker. As you just take these stairs to the ground floor, that is to the bottom floor, what we see is that there is one particular door that we spot. Now this, of course, which we understand, though the protesters have managed to break open several doors, managed to destroy, several properties inside within the presidential palace, there is one which they could not, of course, dismantle or break open. That is this particular door that you see right here. What several of the protesters, of course, have questioned is what can Gotabaya Rajapaksa be hiding inside this particular door? What could be behind this particular door? Now, that's the question, especially, quite a lot of citizens would like to know. From enjoying these swimming pool to, playing a piano and then attending press conferences of their own, of the citizens themselves. Now, clearly the citizens are having a time inside a luxury life, which they call it, which once Gotabaya Rajapaksa had enjoyed in this very location. If I could go across to a few citizens, what do you make of this?
It's the power of the common people, undoubtedly, because it's the power. That's what made us come here, because normal people would never have access to places like this before. So it's all the power of the common people.
It's very proud. Now we showed the politicians they are here to govern us, for us to become better, not to use us for their lives. They just made their lives better and they pushed us to the brink. And we waited until we lost everything to realize that we have to take it back.
You have explored through the presidential palace. What did you see?
I saw that they are having a luxury life than us. Actually, we are leading a very poor life. So we saw that how they are living and how they have everything they have. So we don't have anything.
All right, and from who will be the next President Prime Minister of Sri Lanka to who will be the next Prime Minister of the UK, and Conservative MPs are putting their names forward in the race to succeed Boris Johnson as Conservative leader and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Right, Gargi, who are the potential candidates who are said to be wanting that top job? We also know of Rishi Sunak, but now the bookies' favourite has been stung with a 2-decade-old clip in which he appears to be saying he did not have working-class friends. NDTV's Parmeshwar Bawa sent us this report.
I want to lead this country in the right direction. My values are non-negotiable, and I have spent my career bringing people together.
Rishi Sunak's man of the people narrative is going to need more work. A 20-year-old video of his days at Oxford University has spiraled into a new row where he says he has aristocrat friends but not working-class ones.
But I'm running to be our next Prime Minister.
Despite this, Sunak is still the favourite to become the next UK Prime Minister, but the competition is hotting up. Newly appointed Foreign Office Minister Rehman Chishti, Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt are the latest to join the growing number of Tories vying for the top job. There are now 11 candidates so far, and over the next 8 weeks, the Conservative Party will vote to pick the final 2 contenders before a final face-off. Conservative backbenchers are meeting to finalize the rules and timetable for this heated contest. Many of those running are promising to cut the heavy taxes Rishi Sunak has imposed as Finance Minister. But Sunak says he is not going to mislead people into thinking tax cuts are possible right now until public finances improve. Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV.
Welcome back. More worrying news on the economic front. On Monday, the rupee's brutal plunge continued, with the currency ending at another new all-time low of nearly 80 per dollar.
Absolutely, Gargi. Now almost 80 rupees for $1 US. Our colleague Priyachi gets us all the details.
Rupee slumped to a record low of 79.43 per dollar, and it lost 18 paise in this session, and with this it's down by 7% just this year. The bad news for the economy does not end. Our foreign exchange reserves are shrinking. They're down to a 14-month low at $588 billion. Rupee's free fall could take it to 80 rupees per dollar soon, even after the Reserve Bank announced steps to boost foreign inflows on Wednesday. Now, why is this happening, and why is the Reserve Bank really targeting foreign inflows? It's because foreign funds leaving the Indian markets is one of the primary reasons dragging the rupee down. Because of the war in Ukraine, global fears of recession, rising inflation and interest rates make it risky for investors to keep their money in emerging economies such as India. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that because of this, the amount of foreign funds that have left India in just the 7 months this year is more than the total amount of foreign fund inflows that we received in the last 2 years combined. There's been a record foreign foreign fund pull out of $28.9 billion this year. Now, where is all of this money going is a question. Investors take their money to stronger currencies such as the dollar. This is driving up the demand for the dollar and naturally taking up its rate. Of course, as dollar's value goes up, all currencies valued against it go down. And the problem could get worse. Global inflation fears could accentuate as US inflation data that will come out this week is projected to cross its 40-year high and reach 9%. It's not just the rupee, but currencies across the world, even those of developed economies, that are weakening because of the strengthening dollar. While rupee is at a record low, yen is at a 24-year low against the dollar, euro is at a 20-year low, pound is at a 2-year low, and the slump does not seem to end with the rising dollar, rising inflation and interest rate hike.